in my growing up, in every school that I went to, I was known as Jim Gallagher's brother.
Hmm.
That has carried on to the bars that we go to now. Oh, that's Jim Gallagher. Oh, you're his brother? I've never been able to grow out of that.
Oh, lie the fields of pride, where once watched the small rivers glide. Our love was on the wing, we had dreams and songs to sing. Hold down the lonely around the fields of pride.
You look like you're about to fall asleep, Grandpa.
Yeah.
Let's get you some more apple cider. All right. Well, this is
With something with a little more shot in it.
we might need your mic a little bit closer. That's
Hello, Mike.
I hope the mic says hello too. Okay. Well, yeah. So, like I was saying earlier on the phone call today, I wanted to sort of build on that conversation we had 8 years ago. My name is Matthew Gallagher, and I'm interviewing my grandpa about the Korean War. And what is your name?
My name is Daniel John William Gallagher.
Where were you born?
I was born in Manhattan, actually Manhattan Hospital in New York City.
What is your name?
James Gallagher.
Where were you from or born?
Astoria, Queens, New York City.
You weren't born there, though.
So one of the things that I got out of that conversation, which we've talked about since then, Uncle Jim, you had mentioned that you joined a couple of years earlier than you were originally would have been drafted for. And I had heard just in history books that when you join early, you can sort of choose your path a little bit more directly than if you wait to be drafted. But you had a different experience with that because you had wanted to go in for weather and meteorology, and they told you could do that, but then you were immediately put into the Air Force.
No, this was in the Air Force. Well, I wasn't in there already, but this was in the Air Force recruiting station,
Yeah.
and which I had not intended to stop there 5 minutes before I'd stopped there.
Yeah.
I just happened to see it, and but because I was draft bait and wouldn't get my number called for a couple of years, I said, well, all right, if I can do something, and I couldn't get a job because you were draft bait. So I said, well, maybe I can do something in the Air Force. And so I went in and I asked, I'd like to be get involved in weather forecasting. Now, I'm not an officer or a college
Yeah.
student, so I figured, all right, I'd just be a tech. Well, anyway, they assured me that I'd be able to do that. And then when I got out of basic training, I was assigned to the motor vehicle department as a automobile mechanic.
Yeah.
That was that.
Hmm. So would you say that was that something you had heard? I know you said 5 minutes earlier, 5 minutes prior, you weren't thinking about joining the Air Force, but was that a thought at all that joining early you could
No,
choose your path at all?
I
No.
had not even thought about joining.
Yeah.
I was working on a farm up in the Catskills at the time, and we had just finished haying, and I just graduated from high school in February. I worked on a farm up in Utica, uh, and then chose to come back to work in the Catskills where I'd worked a couple years before. But at any rate, after the haying, I was getting a little bit tired of it, and I said I want to take a couple of weeks off before I have to go back more haying or whatever we were doing, and catch a ball game or go to go to a show or something. So that's why I went home, and I don't know. I just happened to be walking up the avenue and just seeing the place, and then thinking about the weather forecasting. I was always interested in the sciences. Um, it was a last minute
Hmm.
choice. Yeah.
And Grandpa, you had joined fairly shortly after that. Was that a year or two
About,
later that you had joined?
I joined in January of '54. When did you get out, Jim?
July of '55.
Yeah, so we overlap by a year.
hmm But and you had mentioned that you were joining because of the possibility for a college education and that being paid for as well. Was that something from Uncle Jim that you had?
Oh yeah, yeah. I didn't think much of the future or anything else. I was living a fun life. And Uncle Jimmy said, if you want to get the college education, you better get in the military now, because we couldn't afford any of that. And so I did, and it worked out very well.
Yeah.
Well, there was one other aspect about that many people may not recognize, and that is when we were in school, we did not have guidance counselors. And so we really had very few, and no one had gone to college before us. So we had very little information to go by guidance in that respect. And, uh, and consequently, one of the things we didn't know is that possibility of going to the city, a city college in New York City. There were 4 or 5 of them. That could have gone for next to nothing.
hmm
I never knew anything about that, and whether that would have influenced what I did, I don't know. But the main point is we didn't even know about it. College was just something that was out of reach because financially, but that may not have been the question had we had a little bit more advice beforehand.
Yeah. And was your time in the Air Force what inspired you to pursue marine biology and working oceanically?
No, it wasn't a factor in making that decision. But at one time when I was over in Korea, and I had some free time, I was trying to think what I want to do in life, and I realized that most everything that I really like to do was associated with the ocean, whether
hmm
it be fishing or swimming or whatever. And but I had always been interested in science or um, natural conditions. And anyway, it struck a chord. And I think from then on in, and I took a couple of USAPI courses, college courses while I was over there, with the intent of then going into college, using those credits to speed up the process. Um, so it was something that I realized while I was over in Korea, but it was something that I was kind of building towards all along without knowing that marine. And then the thing I found out when I got out, that oceanography wasn't even being taught in many places. Um, and there were only a couple of schools available, but it was growing. It was starting to pick up where you could major in some science, and then for graduate work get into marine science. That was happening just at that time.
hmm And then you got to be a part of the growth of that even more later on once you were teaching at Avery Point and as
Oh,
they were really offering classes for it.
yeah, they had a marine science course. They didn't have a major in it,
hmm
but that's why I went to URI. And that combined with the fact that the underwater sound lab was right on Long Island Sound, which I'd always wanted to wind up living by. The two things came together. I was lucky.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, going back a little bit in time, with both of you growing up in Astoria and being Yankees fans,
I was
um,
never a Yankee fan.
you were not a Yankee fan. Were you a Mets fan
I
or
was a Giant
Dodgers?
Giant fan. My father was a Giant fan as well.
Uh,
Um, I was always told by him that there were no real Yankee fans, and that if you were a real fan, what you would do is you would go to a ball game and sit up in the bleachers. That's where the fans were.
yeah.
And in the Yankee Stadium, uh, those were people who had money went went to see the Yankees play, and so they weren't really fans in his mind. Um, and in fact, the only time I ever went to the Yankee Stadium as a kid was I would bring my glove when Boston come in with the hope of catching a home run off Ted Williams,
Wow.
and I never did.
Darn it. He should have been trying harder.
Yeah. Well, interesting story about that. Many, many years later, with Jason, Maureen's son, he was taking some kind of a class. I think how old? 6 or 8 years of age, or 10 or something
Yeah.
like that. Was taking a class, uh, lessons on baseball, and one of the guys who came in to teach it was Ted Williams.
Wow.
And I got a picture of Ted Williams leaning over Jason and showing him how to swing a bat.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah.
That should have been you, Uncle Jim.
Yeah, you're telling me, yeah.
And you got to go to the polo grounds all the time, right?
Mm. Yes, that's right. And in fact, we would go over at the time, I think it was 15, no, it may have been 25 cents to get in, see a game. And we'd be shining shoes, making when I got something like 25 or 30 or 50 cents, I forget the amount, I'd close up the shoebox,
Mhm.
get on a train, which was a dime, go to the polo grounds, get my ticket. And about the second or third inning, you'd be looking around to see what seats are empty, at the box seats or at the reserve seats, and then go over there and watch the rest of the game with good viewing, and take the train back for another 10 cents. Did that many times as I don't even a preteen. Yeah.
Wow. And at the polo grounds, with those initial seats before you moved into the box seats, would you be in that center field that's 500 feet back?
I only went there a couple of times.
Mhm.
I went there mostly the first time anyway, just to see what you could see from there, and it was far.
Yeah.
No, most of the times, as I say it, I'd go there in the first or second inning or whatever, make a decision. Okay, it's time to move and get into the better seats. And anyway,
That field's really legendary because of those crazy dimensions. No
oh yeah,
other stadium I've ever
yeah,
seen like that.
it was oval shaped.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
200 feet to the two poles, and then 500 feet all the way to center field.
I saw Buddy Kerr one time hit a pop fly. I think he was a right-handed batter. Hit a
Yeah.
pop fly in left field, and it went right down the line, 250 feet, went for a home run.
That's crazy.
But I saw another one. Ernie Lombardi, who was a catcher, hit a steaming liner, one bounce, into the bleachers in Polo Grounds.
Wow.
It was something, yeah.
And I've heard you both also talk about baseball growing up. You'd head down to the field with your nice mitt and play some ball with the other kids in the area on a nice little field. How'd you like baseball as a kid growing up?
I loved it. But they weren't nice little fields.
Nah,
They were
nice
filled
little
with
fields.
rocks and ruts and
Broken glass.
broken glass. Yeah. He was what we used to call a lots,
Yeah.
LOTS. And he had very few manicured fields. And very rarely, until much later, you'd ever play in an organized team. There weren't anything like Little League.
Yeah.
And playing an organized league, not team, where you did play in a nice field. There was one of them, maybe two of them in the story here, I think. But for the most part, it was very difficult playing for a ground ball when these things were hit
Hmm.
because of the stones and everything else in it.
Just bounce around all over the place.
Yeah, yeah.
If it helps, I've played on a couple of fields like that.
You did too?
Yeah, definitely. Not around here, in some further away areas in Connecticut.
Mhm. Was that an organized league that you played
It
in?
was, yeah. I was in high school. It
Oh,
was in
really?
some fields in New Haven. There was this mound that the rubber's up here. It's right
Yeah.
here,
Yeah.
and then you're throwing and landing on a hill that's higher up than the mound.
What?
Yeah, it was impossible to throw a strike. You're landing up higher than you're starting, and
Hmm.
you can't push forward.
Yeah.
And then
Which one did you do more, pitching or shortstop?
oh, I didn't play shortstop till my senior year.
Oh,
Really, I played a
really?
lot of third base,
Mm-hmm.
which on a crazy field like one of those was not very much fun
Mm-hmm.
either because the ball is being rocketed at you. It could bounce in any direction.
Yeah.
Um, Shortstop senior year, that was a lot of fun. Um, that felt like something I always wanted to eventually get
Yeah.
to. We always had somebody ahead of me, a grade older than me, that was playing it, but so probably pitched more than
Yeah.
shortstop.
You were talking about third base. Frankie Fish was on the Giants, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah. Frankie Fish was a third baseman uh, in the 30s or so.
Hmm.
And I had my kids, my young kids at this time. We went to a school to watch this Frankie Fish was going to give a talk.
Yeah.
And sure enough, they started a raffle afterward. Now, first of all, Fish really impressed me because he says, I can never catch a damn ball, but I always hit it in my chest, and my chest was black and blue, but I stopped the ball and threw the guy out. Then but this guy's in the Hall of Fame.
Hmm.
Then he has a raffle for the whole school. The guy who wins the raffle goes up and shakes his hand and gets a signed baseball.
Hmm.
Your Uncle Christopher won.
Of course he did. No, but that's a good third baseman though, because
Oh, yeah.
a lot of times the balls hit so hard.
Yeah, he was
He,
fearless.
yeah, I know. I'd be at practice and it's just slow pitch to the batter, and I'm still at third base, and they're just rocketing the ball at
Yeah.
me, and I miss something or go to the ground to get a ball, and my coach is yelling at me, block that, stop being a sissy out there.
Yeah.
Like, this is scary.
You know, interestingly, at that time, I don't recall there were very many left-handed hitters, so
Mm,
that you didn't get the same experience as first baseman as
yeah,
you did as third baseman. Yeah.
exactly. Although, yeah, the occasional lefty only pulls it at least
Yeah.
too, though.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so if you do get one, you know it's coming to you.
Yeah.
They would tell you about Matt's wow catch. He was playing shortstop, and he was pretty young at the time. And a line drive, one of the last ones in the game, line drive goes way to his right, and he dove so that his body was horizontal to the ground. Catches the thing, gets up and tries to throw out a guy from first who had thought it was going to go into the outfield. All I could do was go, "Wow!" I was astounded. And that's definitely a professional play.
I should have had him at first base.
No,
A better throw has him.
no. No. To me, it was amazing that you could think that quickly. And no, the guy took a long. He was running hard to get go to second, and as soon as he caught you, that you fell, and he turned and he blistered back to first. No, you did an incredible job.
Thanks, Grandpa. I mean, in that moment, I remember throwing it and then thinking, "Oh, really? This is what we did. This is what we got on the throw." Should have had him, but we did win, so that was good. I better check on the clock. We're probably getting close to the 30-minute mark. Take a quick little break. Two commercials.
Hey, Matthew, congratulations. I just saw all the texting back and forth saying how everyone's so pleased with what you're doing. Fantastic. What's your next step now? You just go for graduation. There's nothing in between you and graduation. And what else happens then? Well, you got a job for the summer. Your school is all set. Next college. Okay, I'll give you another call. You don't have to call me. I'll give you another call sometime today. Take care. I love you. Bye-bye.
All right, welcome back. Welcome back to this nice little episode we're doing. I do have a question along the lines of what we were just talking about during the break. Because I noticed this the other day when we were all here for 4th of July. What's it like standing up and walking around and everyone's yelling at you to sit down?
Well, if you don't shiver good, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You just let it roll off.
Well, you know what the trouble is? They're always afraid that they're going to get some more preaching,
Uh-huh.
which is rather plentiful available
Always
from
something.
a certain party.
Who will not be named.
It keeps it interesting.
No.
No, but I would have. I just put myself in that position of if somebody was really telling me to sit down, I would just think, what do you want from me?
Well,
Just leave me."
the
I
thing
do
is,
understand it, but
yeah, you do understand that they all are very concerned.
yeah,
I have a wonderful family, every one of them, and they're concerned. But uh, sometimes when people don't know, like my brother has leg problems now,
yeah,
and I have the heart problem. I can totally empathize with him, but I can't really feel it.
hmm,
And my sister, the same thing. As much as I really feel for them, I don't know what's happening to them. And that's the same thing with my kids and me.
hmm,
They're very concerned and they feel and all, but they don't know what I know, which is me. And so you have to tolerate it because they're never gonna feel what I feel.
yeah,
It's the guy with a broken finger. He's talking to a guy with a broken leg. The guy with the broken leg is hurting a lot, and the guy with the broken finger is empathizing.
hmm,
But at the end, he says, you have a broken leg, but my finger still hurts. So you can't feel what other people feel. So you have to learn to accept it. That's all.
yeah. That's some good advice.
I don't know if it's biblical or not, but the guy complaining that about his shoes until he met a man who had no feet.
Yeah. Yeah.
And of course, we just celebrated 4th of July. And it reminded me of this conversation I had with somebody in Texas recently about the flag. He used to look at the flag as sort of similarly to the Confederate flag. He's from down south. He's an African American guy. Um, but then one of the days he read what was on the sticker that was on somebody's car, and he saw this little inscription at the bottom, and it said, uh, "I love America. I just don't trust the government." Like, well, that's probably where we're all where we all are right now. So then it kind of clicked with him, and he's thinking, wow, when people have the flag, it's about the people. It's not about
Do,
somebody in
do you
charge.
really want to open this conversation?
Yes.
my only comment, or maybe quick comment to that would be, but the people select the government. So it all
Allegedly.
comes back to the people.
Yeah.
It comes back to the education of the people.
Hmm.
And when Jim and I were young, we had incredible freedom and very good teaching. Even in the high schools and the elementary schools they're not the best. Broken down a bit, but the teachers were excellent,
Hmm.
and what they taught us, including civics, was excellent. So we had a sense and an understanding of the flag and of America, which they have no clue now. I
Yeah.
remember your Uncle Frank. I was up in St. Lawrence where Julianne. Do you know Julianne?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, Julianne lives, and her father was there with a friend from New York, and they were talking about burning the flag, and I ripped into them, and it got to be quite a fight, and I always got along with Frank, but not with the other guy. I could have thrown him out, but the fact that they would consider burning the flag is just an expression, and anyway, I went over to Uncle Bill after, and I said, "Bill, what do you think?" And Uncle Bill just said, "I think they're wrong."
Hmm.
But he never gets involved in a conflict. He's a soft-spoken guy. Never gets involved in conflict. He's the guy who could do 100 push-ups on the back of his hands. And
Oh yeah. I mean, that's sort of taking a page out of almost out of your book, the of seeing the conversation develop and then picking the spot, whether it's because I mean, one thing I noticed, when we would talk about this, you'd see a conversation get way off track, like it's probably getting off track right now. But when somebody's really passionate about something, you can't cut them off because they want to say what
Mhm.
they are thinking, and it's gonna come out. And I would always be trying to battle that
Yeah.
in conversation that we have, but you just gotta let that come out, and then see where you are. And
Yeah. Well, interaction with people is like a tree. The fundamental conversation that you're having is the trunk of the tree, and the branches are all the distortions of the conversation.
Well, I think also, our formative years were uh, developed during the Depression or the end of the Depression and World War II. And so a lot of our early bringing up, um, I don't recall it a lot of conscious teaching of patriotism, but it was there in everything, including in school subjects like civics and things like that. Um, so that it was never a problem at that time. And I have to say, in this day and age, I'm very concerned uh, and discouraged by the fact that there's so little conscious and subconscious patriotism because it bodes ill for this country if something were to happen. Um, to see whether you get volunteer response, for protecting the country, meeting the people, and all that. I worry whether that would happen, and if it doesn't happen, that'd be the end of us. So there's a big difference in our outlook uh, from then to now.
I think that's a great point. When I was taking this class in college, around identity and nation building, a major part of that was creating this sense of a common identity, common nationality. And my example of that was Germany in the 1860s and 70s, where they were trying to create one unified Germany under a German nationality, even though they had a bunch of different local identities. I think we're seeing that almost now here, where we don't know what our common identity is. We're splitting up into these local identities again, or maybe we haven't even really left those. What Because we have to create a sense of being American, even if we do have
Yeah.
different cultures that we come from.
That's almost like making an excuse. It was there in the World War II. Um, everybody, including everybody, was in favor of the government.
Mm,
Since then, the particular government government that we have, has discovered that they can get votes by the divide and conquer.
yeah,
And they just keep dividing and conquering, dividing and conquering. They keep getting votes. And in the process, they've lost the entire concept of the freedom of America. And it's pathetic when we look at the uh, kids now, even yourself, you have no idea what we had as freedom.
mm,
And you had to be, you had to feel very free.
mm,
But we could play in the streets of New York, and freedom is another thing. It's very hard to describe, but I think it's the one thing that every animal in one form or another wants. And but then they have to be aggressive to get it.
yeah. But I mean, and that may be what happened with dividing. I mean, it's definitely happened dividing people into different groups. That sort of dilutes the common national identity that we have, where when any given event happens now, we're all split on it. Um, where something like World War II and Pearl Harbor, when Pearl Harbor happened, everybody was on the same page of we need to respond to this. 9/11 was similar, although I think the response people were split on. Um, it's interesting to see what it would take for everybody to unify on something. COVID didn't do it.
Well, Jimmy believes, and he's right, that these single issue people are incapable of understanding a country because you have to give and take. You have to accept some things that you really don't want, but as long as they strengthen the country. And Jim, your attitude is go ahead.
Well, my question, if we really go back, um, my question is why and how did this come about? And I think, again, when we were brought up, and even before that, most people didn't have very much money. Times were always a little bit tough and just getting through life. And since the Second World War, we've had a period of prosperity. And I think, maybe we've had, I hate to say too much freedom, but maybe people have had too much time and they're not busy enough or they don't need, as my father used to say, you're not hungry enough, um, to let all these little trivial things become major issues and where they're all divisive. And so look what we got now. We got a country that's divided not in two parts, but about 100 parts. Uh, how the hell do you expect to become unified if that's the direction that you're heading? And how do you correct it? And I don't see any attempts, the fact of anything, you believe, looking at and listening to the media, uh, they're probably one of the most divisive um, agencies in the country right now. And to some degree, I think things are getting worse. And I don't know where it's going.
Well, the thing that really makes you feel that we can't come back again is the government itself is behind much of it.
Oh, yeah.
And that's a government now. It's not a government, it's a party that wants to keep winning and winning at any extent and no thought about the future.
Well, government has become too powerful, and I think the parties have become too powerful, such that the major objectives of the parties is to retain power, not so much that it's best for America, and they have to do it um, while putting down the other party, and that's been going on for a while. It's not improving. Um, I don't know the answer to that. I don't know the answer to how you correct that.
That was an interesting point that you brought up, about maybe it's been too easy, and I think it's almost an aspect of humanity that we need a problem going on that needs to be solved, and if there are no problems, then we need to create problems so that we have something to work towards. There was this quote I heard one time, that was basically, if if we lived in a utopia, we would tear it down out of boredom.
Yeah, yeah.
It's almost like a weakness of humanity.
Well, it's been said for a number of years now. You don't want to see it, but what this country needs is a strong recession. That'll get people back down to needing, and that I don't, I can't go into the details because I don't know most of the details. But and again, as I said before, I don't even know how it really developed, except people either have a lot of free time, um, or they're in very good economic situation, but they don't have to worry about food on the table or anything else. So they have to worry about something else.
Yeah.
And I don't want to get into the whole woke thing because I disagree with that 100%, because it's headed in the wrong direction. And it's based upon, it's unfounded, I should say, in terms of its, I don't know about ideals. I don't know what it is. Anyway,
Well,
it's discouraging. That's all I can say.
Yeah.
along with Uncle Jimmy's saying, um, during World War II, the government was pro people getting all Americans together, and now because I had a war to fight, if we were in a war today, do you think our government could pull people together? The young people, we have great people in the military now, there's no question, and a lot of good people who are potential. but there are so many screwed up drunks, not drunks, but drug in. I can't see them in the military, and we will need them to fight. Let's face it. There has to be human fodder when you're fighting, and these people can't do it.
Well,
Yeah.
even just the mindset of people. If you go from the Second World War, where everybody chipped in. If you weren't in the military, like our mother worked in a defense company, I mean, everybody participated, and there were restrictions on not green cards. I don't know. There were things you couldn't buy.
Yeah.
But and then
Ration cards.
Ration cards.
ration cards, yeah,
Yeah.
right. And nobody complained about it. You did it because you knew it was for the best of the country. And then you got things like in the 1960s, definite mind changes among young people. And Vietnam War, the number of people who went to Canada so that they wouldn't fight. Well, what if something happened now? My God, I think Canada would be deluged. They'd probably cut people off very quickly. I just don't see that you'll get that kind of response that, "Gee, this is my country, I got to help."
Yeah.
Um,
It is hard to imagine.
yeah.
And remember, no matter how good your technology is, wars are won on the ground.
Oh, I don't even know what war would look like now. It's so
Look at Ukraine.
yeah.
That would be the same thing here, with fearfully the atomic bombs, because these people like Putin, the fact that they threaten the atomic bombs, the fact that it's even on their mind. These people are so off base. I'm trying to say nice things because you're taping it, you beggar. But so off base that they could even think of a war of atomic weapons. It's impossible. But that's where we are now. But other than that, wars are won on the ground.
Yeah. Do you see this is a funny atomic bomb transition, but did you see, I mean funny in a good way. They made a movie about the development of the atomic bomb called Oppenheimer that's in theaters right now.
Yeah.
It looks like it's very well done. I'm excited to see it at some point soon. But you haven't seen the trailer or anything for that?
I haven't. No.
Well, in terms of what we're talking about, I don't see that as pulling the country together.
No.
I mean, it's good to have that. If it's really a documentary, they did a great thing
Mm,
because the atomic energy can be very good for the country, for people, properly used, properly monitored. The use of it is more like what demented people would do, and that's who we have in power now.
Well, I think also the fact that the government is so involved, from what I understand, in the education of a youth and swaying it. I don't even want to comment on the where it's going, but um, brainwashing
mm,
in a large sense, and then also the social media. I mean, when I look at little kids growing up today, uh, what kind of if they don't have a strong family, what kind of information are they getting? What kind of training and education in terms of just living and living with others, or living with the Ten Commandments?
mm.
How much? I think that's why you get more people into drugs. Um, I don't know. Well, I don't know what drugs in the first place. I've often said, if it's the feel good, why don't you do something for somebody else and feel good?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I don't know where we're going, but I kind of dread our grandchildren and great grandchildren and those after them, if the direction continues where it's going, as to what kind of a life they're going to have. I just don't know. And things don't remain static. And you don't expect them to, but you hope they improve.
Two.
I think that's a 2.
My goodness, it's
Five.
right on the thing.
It's a 5.
No.
Flip it over,
Yeah.
Bob. Flip it over. There you
That's
go.
okay. That's okay.
Oh, fine.
You're beginning to scare me.
3 plus 2.
That was a 7. Hey, engineers go for detailed facts. We don't have to flip things over. One. One on the other side.
No, that was Matthew's ball of confusion.
What do you mean? What do you mean?
What the heck, man? Dude,
What's going on?
this is like...
I won. I won fair and square. Fair and square.
Matthew, I tried to fix it back for you.
Uncle Bill, I appreciate you. I appreciate Uncle Bill. I'm gonna wash my hands of this whole situation. All right, I think we're good to get started again. To change the direction a little bit from from where we were, we could go down that rabbit hole for a little while, but one event that I just wish I could have been a fly on the wall of is that your wedding with the Italians on one side and the Irish on the other side, and that whole story.
Uncle Jimmy can give you a better story
Uncle
there
Jim.
because I was just sitting up on a platform like a Phantom Oxford. Uncle Jimmy went through it. Why don't you tell him, Jim?
Well, there were actually a couple of stories involved in it, but one was the Italian versus Irish. Weren't all Irish, but they were non-Italian. And the other was that most of the guys that were grew up with the grandfather or the neighbors, we were all single,
Mhm.
right? So, and at the wedding reception, there was either 1 or 2 bottles of whiskey on every table. So after a little bit of that liquid was consumed, we got a little bit more rambunctious. And at one point, the band played the tarantella.
Mhm.
And even though none of us knew how to dance it, we decided, well, let's ask all those girls over there on the other side, Italian girls, to do the tarantella. Now, I just have to say, prefacing, most of the women were wearing black outfits. I don't remember whether it meant they were widows or whatever it was. But so here we asked the girls to dance. They come out and we're dancing. And in the middle of the dancing, this whole horde of black uniforms comes out and grabs the girls away from us and takes them back to their side of the room. Well, nothing happened as a result of it. We just kind of stood there a little stunned. But that was one story. But the second story had to do at the end of the reception when we were getting ready to leave, and we saw all of these half bottles of whiskey on the table, and nobody taking them up. So we said, "No, let's go. We'll take them. We'll go back and we'll have a party back in Astoria."
Yeah.
And then, so we're looking around for this one guy, Ronnie Gallagher, who was not a relative of ours. He was a neighbor of ours, and we couldn't find him. And in looking around, somebody found him lying in the fountain, stewed to the hat. So we're taking care of Ronnie Gallagher. We get out the bottles of whiskey in 1 or 2 bags, I don't remember. And this fellow, I think was his name,
Walter Eden.
Walter Eden. Walter Eden says, "I'll take care of those." So he said, "Okay." So he goes down below and he gets into a taxi. He goes back to Astoria with all of the whiskey and back to the bar we were going to go to. And the taxi driver says, "Okay, that's so much." Walt Eden says, "I don't have any money." So it turns out Walt Eden gives them all his bottles of whiskey. And so then we're leaving later. We come back to Astoria all ready for this party with no bottles of whiskey.
Oh my gosh. That's not cool.
Yeah.
It's so interesting just comparing the cultures of Irish and Italians, because they're both from a predominantly Catholic background, but so different. But both experienced a lot of trouble once they got to America, and facing a lot of discrimination. um, Astoria, was that a predominantly Italian area, or was it a lot of mixed Italian and Irish?
Well, there was a section, no, it was mixed period.
Uh-huh.
There was a section that was very strongly Italian. There was a smaller section that was all Irish, but we were born and grew up in between sections. So we never grew up in one particular nationalist section. And um,
Well,
I'd-
the
I-
Greeks had a big section.
well,
around
they come in after the Second World War for the
Yeah.
most part.
Yeah.
But for example, when I was in junior high school, that was in the Italian section, and most of the guys that I hung around with or played ball with were from that Italian section down near Astoria Park. But there was never any conflict as a result of that. Um, and so and I never did see any what do you call it? Any actions? That's not the word I want to use. Any
Conflict.
conflicts between any religion or nationality in the area. I don't think I ever did.
Mm-hmm. So
There was hostility in a sense because my father never did accept the fact that I was marrying an Italian girl.
really,
But then he was old time Irish and heavy on the alcohol.
Well, the generation before us, and talking to people who were uncles or parents of friends of ours, I remember guys, and they were Irish American, but first generation, and many of them were born and raised in Manhattan. And in Manhattan, there were definite neighborhoods, nationalist neighborhoods. There was an Irish neighborhood, an Italian neighborhood, a Jewish neighborhood, or whatever, and you had these gangs formed to protect those neighborhoods. And
Yeah.
there were conflicts, fights between groups, with gun. No, I don't know. I can't say guns necessarily, but sticks, things like that. Well, we didn't really see that, but that was common for that at that time for a generation before us.
mm-hmm.
Well, that's an interesting point. When we were growing up in Astoria in our younger years, Queens was the place for people from New York, from Manhattan, to move to because it's out in the country. We had when Uncle Jimmy was talking about lots. We had huge fields in the beginning, but by the time World War II ended, they started building like crazy. But
Yeah.
before that, we never had a problem finding places to play ball, places to do anything. There was always tons of them because Queens was a place where Manhattan people visited,
Mm-hmm.
and now it's part of the city.
Very built up now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in fact, by the time we were in high school, it had become too built up.
Mm-hmm.
Well, after the Second World War, that's when the Greek communities come in, immigrated, and they had already begun. The government, I don't know if it was federal or city, but they had already begun to build low-income housing, high-rise housing, and that was a trend. And when the Greeks come in, they were very astute as to what was going on. They were very conscious of property,
Mm-hmm.
and it's been said that they saved Astoria, and I believe that.
Yeah, they never gave us any trouble at all.
Mm-hmm.
That was not a trouble group.
Yeah.
Of troublemaking.
And they became powerful enough, unified and powerful enough to prevent the further degradation of the area. So, they did a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like when you're talking about our father, yeah, he was anti-Italian, but he didn't. Just as Uncle Jimmy said, he didn't grow up in Queens. He grew up in Manhattan or the Bronx for the most part.
Manhattan, yeah.
So that's just a spillover. That was carrying the shadow of Manhattan into Queens.
Mm-hmm.
And in one generation, that was gone.
Yeah, and not
Yeah.
only that, but those people, even you say Manhattan, but there were good parts of Manhattan and there were
Yeah.
low income. Most of it was low income, I believe, and our family was brought up in a low income area. Um, it was cold water flats. They didn't have bathrooms in the apartments.
Wow.
They shared a toilet with another family. Um, we have pictures of my mother at either confirmation or communion picture. She's wearing her father's work shoes.
Mm.
And have shoes. Yeah, they didn't. They had a tough life, and I think one can only just go back and say, okay, well, my grandfather or grandparents, well, four of them, came over from Ireland. They came over with nothing, you know. How did they get to live wherever they were living? What did they have to put up with? How did they make it? And then they had our parents. It was a little better for them. At least they were able to go to school. Um, but most of them didn't go past the eighth grade
Hmm.
because they had to go work. And then we were born. We were just lucky because they had paved the way, and the country was developing properly at the time. Even just coming out of the depression.
Depression.
In the street that we lived in New York, in Queens, we're the only two who went to college.
Yeah.
In
Wow.
our whole generation. And mainly it was because of him. I wouldn't have gone to college. I would have been a policeman.
Hmm.
But no, it was an evolution. You know, the one thing, there was somebody recently, and this is bringing in today's news, today's politics, who said that none of you people, I'm not going to mention racism, but none of you people understand what it's like to be a young person growing up now. And I'm sure you can, the coloration. And I looked at that and I said, you sons of bees, we grew up the same way. The point is that we grew out of it. We never went about crying about it. You may have to eliminate that, but
well, also I think the well before us, education was the thing that took you out of poverty, and so that was always hammered into you at an early age and through schooling. Um, so then you had people coming in where they didn't care about the education, and they're the ones that got suffering.
Yeah. That's that note you just had too, and that you were alluding to. It's very similar to a guest we had on recently, talking about sort of the victim mentality, where you can really get stuck in that because you're blaming all these other things for holding you back. Um, but once you realize that the only thing holding you back is your ability to put the work in, your determination to get out of it.
The problem is that the government is telling them they're victims. If they live by themselves, they're good people and they would fight to get out of it. But the government is telling them they're victims. The government is given so much extra money that they don't have the motivation to grow out of it.
Yeah.
That simple thing of the motivation, the freedom, has been stolen from us by the government.
Yeah.
So, Grandpa, you had mentioned that your father wasn't okay with you, or he wasn't, I guess, thrilled that you were marrying an Italian woman. Did you experience that at all from grandma's side, or
No,
were they a lot more?
They threw their arms around me.
Yeah.
In fact, one of the funny things is that they most of the Europeans were much smaller than us. So when I met her uncles, the first thing they said is, "Hey, we have a tall man in our family." So no, I never experienced that with any of them.
That's great. Yeah, we have somebody who can play center on the basketball team.
Yeah, but it didn't help him playing bocce.
No.
No, in fact, that's one thing I'm very grateful for.
Hmm.
Because when you meet other cultures, you learn things, and I learned things like having family dinners, how to behave at family dinners.
Hmm.
The Italians have a reputation for heavy wine drinkers. These people weren't heavy drinkers at all.
Mhm.
But the camaraderie, and then let's face it, there was family interactions that weren't pleasant. But by and large, my visibility there was I was totally accepted. Still am. Some of
Mhm.
our cousins still call me now.
Mhm.
Well, I think the one thing that we grew up with, however it became infused, was uh, the love of family and keeping the family together, and through generations, that there was a value in that, more than just a name, but there was a
Yeah.
value in keeping the family together. Of course, now people are marrying in farther away areas and so forth, so it's not that close geographic community. A little bit more difficult to do that, but we're still trying to do it, and we hope that the family will continue to do it. That's irrespective of the nationality. I
Mm.
mean, the Irish are doing it, the Italians doing it. Um, I'd say one thing in terms of the Irish community, unfortunately, and I don't know the reasons why, but unfortunately they became um, heavy drinkers when they came to this country. Um, Maybe because of their poor condition, and it was a way out. I often said, when I look back on it after we left New York to go to Connecticut, and wondered why there were 4 bars on every block, you say, if it wasn't for those bars, there'd be more divorces and murders. Because people had 4 or 5 kids, they were living 4-room apartments.
Yeah.
People working menial jobs. It was a better life than their parents had, but still, it wasn't what you call a very pleasant life. People got through it. Next generation did better. Um, but yeah, why I often wondered why the Irish got that reputation, because even now people will say, look at the Irish, and they associate Irish with drinking. St. Patrick's Day with drinking. If you look at the records, Ireland is not even near the top on the nationality in terms of the number of people who drink. Um, Not to say they didn't drink; they certainly did. But I don't know. But what I'm getting at is that I found, in looking back, that um, most of the Irish stayed renting apartments, whereas the Italians bought houses.
Mhm.
This is in Astoria, but I think it was true even in a broader sense. And similarly, I don't know much about the Polish community, um, um, but the Jewish people, no, they tend to stay in apartments in general, but better apartments. uh, it's a very interesting study to me. As to how at that time there were definite neighborhoods, and neighborhoods had an identity. Now I think most of the neighborhoods are kind of broken up. Although, if anything, they've either become Latino, or black neighborhoods, um, or the others are minor.
Yeah, but Jim, you made an observation which I think holds very true. In primarily the areas we lived in, I don't want to call it Irish areas, but the areas where we lived in.
Mhm.
Uncle Jimmy once said, "You ever notice, Dan, all the people who live in apartments, small apartments with large families, the men come home from work and go to the bars, and that has probably saved more marriages
Mm.
because in the tight families, if the guy's coming right home, uh, it was a pressure release to go to bars. The fact that they drank and spent money, family money, was not good.
Yeah.
But that was an observation Uncle Jimmy made a long time ago when we were kids. And whenever we went to a bar, we were recognized by the bartenders by being Jim Gallagher's sons.
Yeah. But the other thing I'd say about that is that I never realized until we left New York the level of humor and what do I want to call it, not unplanned, no extemporaneous humor in the Irish bars. I thought that was a something, a book should have been written about it, that it was a treasure. Because when I came to Connecticut and started and go to the few bars, most of them weren't Irish anyway, but even those who might have been, you never heard that kind of humor. And if you're in a bar, a neighborhood bar, an Irish bar in New York when we were growing up, the banter that went back and forth and the amount of, and the level of humor, fantastic, absolutely fantastic. I always remember, and this is a very small example, but I remember one time going into this one bar that we went to and my father went to, and we met this Mr. O'Brien, and he had a beer in front of him, and he had a fairly big nose to begin with, but he had this big red nose, and he had a cold. And so I sat down, I stood next to him, and I had a beer, and I said, "Hey, Mr. O'Brien, looks like you have a cold." He said, "That's from drinking out of these cold, wet glasses." I mean, just stuff like that.
Yeah. Just right off the cuff.
Yeah, right off the cuff. Yep, it was just there. And I think I mentioned to Pete Hamill one time, many years later, why there was no book written on Irish humor in the bars. Um, it was a treasure, I thought.
Because nobody could remember it.
Yeah, probably, yeah.
Just a quick note. I think it's so interesting to look back just a few generations and see how quickly the both of you were able to build such a strong family um, with yourselves and your kids and their kids and all of us come together the way that we have. Not every family is able to do that.
It's not hard. All you have to do is love the kid.
Yeah.
That's all you have to do.
Well,
And they will love you.
Yeah, I think it boils down to respect. We have respect for our parents. And certainly for the kids, you hope your kids have respect for you and grandparents or whatever. But it's not something you really have to work very hard at. But you have to be conscious of it. And yeah, we were lucky. And I'm sure there were people who tried it and didn't work out for whatever reasons. We were lucky that we were able to keep them together.
I can give you one.
And the other thing is, in large sense, we learned what not to do from previous generation in terms of family itself, running the family, keeping things together. But again, if you pay no attention to that, then you wouldn't necessarily have this need to keep the family together.
Yeah, like I don't know, we said before, but our father was pretty tough to live with, and he didn't really make friends with us that much. On the other hand, our mother is a saint. We knew the minute she died, she was up in heaven. And my sister, Aunt Maureen, told me once recently, we were talking about the fact that we are what we are because our mother was who she was. And she was telling me that one of the things that happened between me and her was I was getting ready to fly to California for my first job after graduating college. And at that time, Aunt Maureen was 10 years younger than me. She wanted a bicycle. My mother told her, "We don't have the money. You can't have the bicycle." She drove to the bar because that's where you find my father. You drove to the bar to ask him if she could have a bicycle. And then she came back and told me that, and she just told me this recently. She said, "I said to her, Maureen, if you did that behind your mother's back, I don't want you to come down to the airport with me when I'm leaving to go to California." And that interaction, it wasn't always smooth and pasty, but that interaction of family, that interaction of respect, and Maureen learned from that like she never learned from anything else, as far as I know. But we all had it. I learned it from him. So, because Jimmy is the oldest in my family. And the oldest guy always breaks the ice.
Yeah.
So, and the second guy can just drift behind him, in the wake of his wind and all that stuff. So no, when we were little kids, about I would say I was about somewhere between 5 and 8. We always argue even the age little. We used to walk over the Triborough Bridge,
Hmm.
and one time there was a bunch of us going over, and one guy a little older had a pack of cigarettes, and he gave us each a cigarette, and we all smoked it.
Hmm.
And then he said, "You want another cigarette?" And I said, "I'll take one." And my brother said, "You take that, you're going to eat it." So I mean, the family. There was always family type, family learning together.
Oh yeah, that
You
was
got a lot to
interesting
do in
too.
10 days.
I know. If you
Yeah.
have any recommendations.
Yeah, take me.
Yeah.
No. There's just so much to see.
Did you find that with Ryan? That because you were not the oldest, that things came easier for you than it did for the older ones? Because you had some girls in front of you too.
That's a good question. I don't know. um, I feel like there's so many of us.
Yeah.
Me and Stephanie both kind of fell into that middle child category where so much is going on. There's so many people that have to go places. We kind of got lost in the shuffle sometimes. Of course, I'm sure my mom would disagree. I'm sure she always had an eye on, but as long as nothing terrible was happening, yeah. Um, yeah, I definitely learned some good lessons from Ryan about you know, being in the right groups and
Yeah.
falling into the right friend groups and doing the right things.
Well, what
Definitely a good brother to have to look up to.
I'll tell you one thing that is fairly unique in your house is that your father would work long hours, your mother would work long hours. But when he came home from work, he would have dinner, and then every single night he would go over all of your homework. That's 7 kids' homeworks every night after work.
Yeah.
You won't find that in many houses, including not ours, and including not me. One thing is, you parents learn from their children,
Hmm.
and that's one thing I would have wished that I had learned. But no, that's unique, and that's why you guys all benefited so much.
It's so impressive to see both of my parents work that way and then be able to put all 7 of us through college, and 6 of the 7 of us have full-time jobs. Elizabeth's on the way.
Yeah,
That's a remarkable
it
accomplishment.
certainly is. It certainly is.
Yeah.
And you
Um,
all get along with each other.
yeah, that's a big one too.
Yeah.
Uh,
And of course, they introduced the music as well. And
yeah, man.
Well, even that getting along. I don't know who it was recently. I was telling somebody that you guys, my family, Maureen's family, second cousins. I don't know if there's any third cousins. Second cousins are like brothers and sisters.
Oh yeah.
And when you get together, it's old home week. And when we grew up, I we I guess we had a couple of first cousins. We have one second cousin I know of, and he's in Ireland.
Hmm.
Um,
well,
but we were close, but there weren't very many of us.
yeah, Joanne was probably the only one.
Well, the only one,
closest.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, even Billy McGlynn, they were
It's the
Maureen's.
next generation,
Um,
and they were already not really family types.
yeah, yeah.
Billy was not. He was a family, so we always loved him, but he was different.
Hmm. Yeah, for us, any family party, we usually have a good number of second cousins, and then yeah, anytime I see Brendan and Graham, it's like
Yeah, yeah.
they're like siblings as well.
Well, and the better thing even than that is that you take joy in knowing their success.
Yeah,
Nothing other than great. Someone in my family is doing something wonderful,
yeah,
and that's the measure of a family that stays together.
Yeah.
yeah. Not a
Yeah,
jealousy or
right, right.
envy of some sort.
It's just the joy of hearing someone else in the family is doing some phenomenal thing. Yeah.
You can imagine that makes us feel better.
I think for Eamon's wedding, I heard that Moya is trying to arrange the sleeping situation so that we're all we're almost like a Simsbury basement
yeah.
situation.
Yeah, she's even telling the adults. I mean, by adults, I mean the generation before you.
Yeah.
You guys can't show up because I want that generation to fill my house to repeat that, which is I don't know if that made any sense, but it needs more clarification than that.
Oh no, it's fine. Yeah.
No, I mean, will people know what you just said?
Oh, I mean, I don't know.
Okay, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, all of us.
You and I talked about because we know.
Yeah,
But if someone, the third person's listening, they won't have a clue what we just said.
that is true. Well, I guess that's just our inside joke.
Yeah.
No, I mean, yeah, having all of our siblings and all the cousins go over to your house for holidays, sleep in the basement. We always had it as just this big hangout area where the adults weren't allowed, although we would always be begging to play cards with you guys. Yeah, we'd stay up till 5 o'clock in the morning just talking because we'd see each other basically once a year for that week at Christmas time. So there's always a lot to talk about, a lot to catch up on, and I'm sure that'll be similar for the wedding we have in a couple months.
Where Moya's brother is getting married.
Yeah, yes, he is. Let's see, what else do we got? I mean, in the last break we just had, you guys were telling some fun childhood stories. How big was the apartment that you guys were in growing up, and what were the sibling clashes or funny stories?
It was a two-bedroom apartment, one bathroom apartment, a living room and a kitchen, and a long hall going in. Aunt Maureen had to sleep in the same room as Grandma and Grandpa,
Hmm.
and Uncle Jimmy and I slept in a separate room, which was good because he always had a big cage full of birds or animals or something, and then therefore mice coming in and trying to get their food. Life was interesting with Uncle Jimmy, but it was a small apartment.
Hmm.
In fact, it was what would you call it? And where, remember it had the section in there where the soldiers used to sing when they came back.
Oh yeah, they have these small alleys.
These small,
They're not atriums; they were like alleys. There was four sections in this apartment complex, and there were alleys in between. And following the Second World War, you had veterans that out of work that would come by. Some of them would sing, well, begging for money.
Hmm.
because there was a depression right after the war.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And or they played an instrument or something. And so if you had anything at all, you just threw it out the window down the alley for them. I don't know how the hell they made it, but um, that went on for at least a year. I don't know how many
Yeah,
years.
the Marshall Plan ended that.
Yeah, probably, yeah.
Because then they were getting college money for college.
Yeah.
But anyway, to answer your question, it was a small apartment.
Hmm.
It
And
got even smaller when one of our uncles also moved in with us.
oh, really?
Yeah. Okay.
It's just so interesting to think about because you've been back there since then, right? You had gone back in recent years to the old apartment to go see it from a
Not to
distance.
the old pump, to the outside of it.
The outside of it, yeah.
Because when we lived there, when my mother and Uncle Jimmy and father lived there, I was married
Hmm.
and I had all the kids, and we used to drive in because it was a back lot to. We were on a bottom floor in a corner, so I used to hand all my kids through the window and then go around the other side to get in the house.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what I've been back to that.
So that's not this. That's a
Yeah,
different
I
apartment.
showed Uncle Kip where it was because it's right near the bars that we were hanging out in.
And not only that, but I had maintained that that building, those buildings should have been torn down while we were living there, and now they're condominiums selling for 4 times or 5 times the amount of money that we were paying for rent.
Wow.
Unbelievable.
And our apartment, because my father wouldn't pay the rent, every once in a while, every couple of years, they would paint each of the apartments. but they never painted our apartment. And consequently, we got all the cockroaches from the whole houses. Sometimes the floor would look like it was a moving mat.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
What was it like deciding to move out of New York City and down to Connecticut? I know was was Connecticut your first stop after leaving New York City?
No, actually, the thing made the Uncle Jimmy used to change a lot because he went out on a farm.
Hmm.
For me, it was when I went in the army. It's the first time I really went out of New York City. And then when I come back, it was a couple of years of education. And then I moved to California
Hmm.
and took your grandmother with me. So uh, I don't know in what sense you're asking the question, though, because it wasn't traumatic for us. It apparently might have been for our mother,
Hmm.
but at least for me, Jim, it wasn't traumatic at all.
Yeah, no, but well, I don't think that I ever had a dream of staying in New York City. But I don't know that. I mean, working on the farms, I gained a much greater appreciation for country life,
Yeah.
and but I always knew I wanted to live near Long Island Sound,
Hmm.
and when I first got out of college, I worked for 2 years down in Washington D.C. I couldn't wait to get out of there, and so when I got the opportunity to work in Connecticut, I jumped at it, and the fact it was right on Connecticut shore and
Yeah.
halfway between New York and Boston, God, it's
Perfect spot. Yeah.
Yeah. So again, I lucked out there, but I never, growing up, I never had any thoughts about moving to Connecticut. Or, if anything, I would say we probably, because we used to go out to Rocky Point, Long Island, where my uncle had had a place, and go out there in the summertime. So if anything, I guess I would have, if I had to make a choice, I would go to Long Island rather than stay in New York.
Hmm.
But then New York, Long Island became so congested that I found later on, we were talking about this not too long ago, that there were a couple of lots, 2 lots available next to my uncle's place. And when I was about 17, they were up for sale.
Hmm.
And now I had no money to buy them. My father wouldn't buy it. And, well, I never did get that property. Years later, I was working at the Sound Lab, and we had to go down to do some work with the college at Port Jefferson. Can't think of the name of it.
Stony Brook.
Stony Brook.
Yeah.
So used to go down there frequently. We'd get off the ferry at Orient Point and drive down to Port Jefferson and go through Rocky Point. And I'd look at the place that had grown so much, so quickly, non-zoned. I
Hmm.
said, "Oh my God, it's a good thing I never bought this place."
Yeah.
But anyway, that's the only answer I could give.
Well, one of the funny things I think that Uncle Jimmy and I both had one very strong commitment. We're not going to raise our kids in New York City.
Hmm.
And from my standpoint, I look back and Uncle Jimmy, your Uncle Jimmy, moved back to the city as soon as he got out of college.
Yeah.
Uncle Christopher moved back. Kippo, you all live in the city. You say, what the hell? Apparently we missed the boat there somewhere.
That's the same with Deirdre. Susan didn't really go to the city. She went up to Hartford area and stayed up around that area. But when Deirdre was going to college, we took her to a number of different colleges. But Fordham, she liked Fordham. And whether she liked it because it was in the city or not, I don't know. But we finally agreed, okay, go to Fordham. The Fordham had a stone wall around all 4 sides.
Yeah.
I don't want you leaving those 4 walls. First telephone call I get after she goes to school was from down in the village.
Hmm.
Hi, Dad. I said, where are you calling from? They're calling from the village. The first night she violated it. And then, and she got out and after that and went to graduate school and stayed in the city and then lived in the city. Well, that's where she met Sean.
Hmm.
So that dream of mine was shot, but now they live in Connecticut.
That is funny. It's almost like what we were talking about earlier with I mean, not to say this is a problem, but if you don't have a problem, you create one so you have something to solve. It's almost like, well, I live in New York City. I need to move to the suburbs because that's a better place to raise a family. But then you grow up in the suburbs. "Oh, I'd really like to be in a high energy area where a
Yeah,
lot
Yeah,
is
well,
going
but
on."
there's one thing you're missing in that. Your young people. The cities have a lot more for young people.
Yeah.
Wait until you have children and
Yeah.
you see how they're growing up.
yeah,
You will run out of the place.
I'm sure. Yeah.
yeah. And also from our standpoint, growing up there, of where during the time period we grew up there was no real problem with crime,
Hmm.
no problem with drugs that we knew of. And I could take the subway system and go anywhere and all over the New York City and never worry about it. I wouldn't do that today. And here the Inter goes down, takes the train down, takes the subway down to South Street Seaport. I keep telling her, don't tell me when you're going. I don't want to know. Um, but the city is nothing like what it was,
Hmm.
in at least in terms of security. But she did the same thing one time. She spent her junior year in University College Galway in Ireland.
Uh,
And one day I get a call from her. No, I get a collect call from the United Kingdom. I said, who the hell would call me collect the United Kingdom? Now, I had been working in NATO, and I had a number of people that I worked with from England and Scotland. But I couldn't imagine that they would call me collect.
yeah.
Anyway, the curiosity got the best of me, and I said, okay, I'll take the call. Hi, Dad. Deirdre, where are you calling in the UK? She said, oh, well, there was a special deal, transportation deal for students to take the trains in Ireland and then be able to take the train up to Northern Ireland with really a great discount in cost, and then come back to where you were. So she's calling from Northern Ireland. That's why the UK. This was in 1980 something, in the middle of the Troubles.
Wow.
And I said, oh my God. And she said, oh, no worry. We met, she was with a bunch of girls. She said, we met a couple of boys. They showed us around Belfast. And I was very active, involved at that time in the situation in the north of Ireland. Oh my God, my heart was in my mouth.
Just thinking, get out of there.
Yeah, well, even when she was in New York, I kept, and she'd walk all over the place. I'd say, do you have a whistle? Do you have mace? Do you have a stick? What do you?
Yeah.
No, I don't need any of that. I said, when there's drugs around, nothing is safe. But she's never changed. She's still like that. I just say, you're very lucky. Thank God.
Hmm. I would get something similar to that in high school, but it would be Steph Gallagher's brother.
Yeah. Okay, you know what it's
Yeah,
like.
yeah. Oh, that's funny. You gotta have a sibling pave the way for you.
Oh, yeah.
You
As
get your
long as
foot in
it's
the door
positive.
as long as it's positive. We covered a lot of stuff that I had written down. Let's see. Um, this is sort of an observation, but I think it's really cool to see that you both ended up in the same town. You get to spend every day together as older brothers after living in a full life, and then have the birthday cakes every day and get to hang out and be close to all the family around here too. That must be fun.
So what's wrong with us?
Yeah, it's a blessing.
Yeah,
It really is. Yes.
from the brothers in Astoria to Niantic, Connecticut.
Yeah. Just a quick funny story. Um, I was talking to Mary Ellen Hanrahan a couple of weeks ago or so, and she brought up something that an experience that we had in Ireland in 1970. I took my mother to Ireland with my wife and the kids, and we went to all the farmhouse B&Bs because the kids were small. And anyway, we're in one farmhouse in the middle of nowhere, and there was another couple there. It was an old English couple, and I don't think they were very worldly that they got around. They didn't seem to be anyway. But in the conversation, the fellow says to my mother, "Well, where are you from? Like, what country?"
Yeah.
And my mother says, "Astoria." And the guy looks at her like she has two heads. Where the hell is Astoria? And so Mary Ellen Henry, I said, "Always remember that story." And she laughed. I said, I could say that to people in Connecticut. I'm from Astoria. Yeah.
You tell us when you're running out of tape.
Yeah.
I think that's just about. We might be ready to wrap it up.
Okay.
Just want to make sure I got everything covered. Yeah, I think that's pretty good.
Okay.
I guess it's time to wrap it up. This has been a great conversation with both of you guys, and I'm glad I was able to bring the equipment and get this conversation going.
No,
I know
we enjoyed it.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right, this is from Matt Gallagher with Dan Gallagher, my grandfather, and James Gallagher, my uncle. Bye, guys.
Ciao.
Hours and hours I listen to your love song all night long for you.
Which one?
Only for me. Our house is a very, very, very fine house with two cats in the yard. Life used to be so hard. Now everything is easy 'cause of you. Rest your head for just 5 minutes. Everything is good. Cozy room. The windows are illuminating brightly. Sunshine through my regions for you. Only for you. Our house is a very, very, very fine house with two cats in the yard. Life used to be so hard. Now everything is easy 'cause of you.
La 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 la. Hey,